My people were not that educated, but they are very, very intelligent. Good common sense, horse sense, we call it.
Dolly Parton breaks silence on her time with Kid Rock. For more than 60 years, one woman has managed something almost no one else in American entertainment has pulled off. She has stayed famous, stayed loved, and stayed completely untouched by scandal. No feuds that stuck. No politics that clung to her name. No headline that turned her into a villain. Dolly Parton built her entire career on a simple promise: she would love everybody, judge nobody, and keep the music at the center of it all. But in 2023, one collaboration threatened to undo all of that. A single song, recorded with one of the most divisive men in music, pulled Dolly into a storm she never saw coming. And when she was finally cornered into talking about it, what she said shocked the very fans who thought they knew her best. Dolly Parton did not need to prove anything to anybody. By the time she turned 75, she had already written thousands of songs, sold more records than almost any artist alive, built a theme park empire in the Smoky Mountains, and quietly funded a children's book program that has put millions of free books into the hands of kids who would never have owned one otherwise. Presidents have praised her. Generations of fans across every genre have claimed her as their own. So when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame decided to induct her in 2022, most people expected her to simply accept the honor and move on. Dolly did not see it that way. She had spent her whole life in country music. She had her own Hall of Fame, her own community, her own sense of what she had earned and where she belonged. Being placed alongside rock legends felt, to her, like an honor she had not actually worked for. She even tried to take her name out of the running, telling the Hall of Fame plainly that she had never made a rock record and didn't think she deserved the title. They refused to let her withdraw. Her songwriting, they told her, had shaped rock music whether she had intended it to or not. So she stood on that stage in Los Angeles in November of 2022, joked that she guessed she was a rock star now, and smiled through the applause. But underneath the joke was something that actually bothered her. She didn't want to wear a title she hadn't earned. So she decided to earn it. That decision became Rockstar, a sprawling 30-track album where she would duet with some of the biggest names rock music had ever produced, proving once and for all that she could stand in that world on her own terms. One name on her list was Kid Rock. The two had brushed past each other for years in the same industry circles but had never actually worked together. Dolly had always liked his raw energy, the way he refused to be boxed into one genre, the unpolished honesty in his voice. She had a song in mind for him called Either Or, a story about a woman who finally stops making excuses for a man who has been treating her badly. The subject was straight out of classic country heartbreak, but Dolly wanted the sound to hit like rock and roll. She sent him the demo. He said yes. The song landed as track 7 on Rockstar, released in November 2023. Kid Rock's gravelly, unpolished voice sitting next to Dolly's sweet, soaring harmonies should not have worked on paper. But it did. He played the man who lies and cheats and breaks promises. She played the woman who finally sees him clearly. It felt lived in, honest, the kind of duet that doesn't usually survive in an era of overproduced pop collaborations. And commercially, it paid off in a way nobody expected. Rockstar became the single biggest hit of Dolly's entire career. Think about that for a second. A woman who had been releasing albums since the 1960s was, in her 70s, having the best sales week of her life. The album topped 6 different Billboard charts at once, including both rock and country listings. It was proof, undeniable proof, that Dolly Parton could still shock the industry after 60 years in it. But success came with strings attached. Almost the moment the album dropped, attention turned away from the music and onto her co-star. People wanted to know one thing: why Kid Rock? Why would the most carefully neutral woman in American music choose, of all people, a man whose name had become shorthand for controversy? To understand why that question carried so much weight, you have to understand who Kid Rock actually is, and the long road of controversy that brought him to this point. He exploded onto the scene in the late 90s as a loud, unapologetic mix of rap and rock, the kind of performer who built his whole brand on not caring what anyone thought of him. His fans loved that. It made him magnetic. But it also turned him into a walking headline machine for the next 2.5 decades. It started big, on one of the largest stages in the world. During the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show, in front of an audience of families watching from their living rooms, he tore a hole through an American flag, wore it like a poncho during his performance, and then flung it into the crowd. Veterans groups were furious. One organization representing millions of former service members filed a lawsuit against the network that aired it. He never apologized, insisting he meant no disrespect. The public wasn't so sure. 2 years later, a private tape allegedly involving him surfaced online after being stolen from a safe belonging to former Creed frontman Scott Stapp. Both men scrambled to file restraining orders to stop the footage from being sold, but the story had already done its damage to his public image. In 2007, the controversy turned physical. At the MTV Video Music Awards, he got into an actual brawl with Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee, a man he had once called a friend. Cameras caught the whole thing. He walked away with a misdemeanor battery citation. The clip became one more entry in a growing pattern, a man who often solved disagreements with his fists rather than a conversation. Then came the verbal attacks. In 2015, he went after filmmaker Michael Moore and actor Seth Rogen with insults that were widely condemned as cruel for the sake of being cruel. That same year, in a Rolling Stone interview, he dismissed Beyoncé's catalog, claiming she lacked a defining song the way artists like Prince had, and followed it with a crude comment about her body alongside his own stated preferences. Critics called it disrespectful toward one of the most decorated performers of her generation. As America's political divide deepened through the back half of the 2010s, Kid Rock leaned further into it. In 2016, during a live show, he hurled a vulgar insult at NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who had begun kneeling during the anthem to protest police violence. Some in the crowd cheered. Others were appalled. It was an early signal of where his public persona was heading. In 2017, he teased a run for the U.S. Senate, and for a brief stretch, news outlets actually entertained the idea. It turned out to be a publicity stunt tied to an album release. He later admitted it himself, calling it one of the most baffling things he'd ever done, joking that he didn't understand who looks at him and sees a senator. The admission didn't make him look clever. It made him look like someone willing to use the political system as a marketing tool. He also kept flying the Confederate flag at his shows for years, brushing off accusations of racism by insisting there was no hatred behind it and that he loved his country, his hometown of Detroit, and black Americans equally. Whether people believed that defense or not, the flag remained, for millions of Americans, a painful symbol he refused to retire. His support for Donald Trump was never subtle. In late 2016, he began selling concert merchandise mocking the states that hadn't voted for Trump, using language many saw as a direct insult to roughly half the country. During Pride Month in 2021, he made an on-stage remark widely viewed as a slur against the LGBTQ community, and rather than walking it back, a statement posted to his accounts doubled down, suggesting that anyone offended by the word probably fit the description. There was no apology in sight. In 2024, he performed at the Republican National Convention ahead of that year's election, cementing his place as one of conservative media's favorite entertainers. By 2026, when the NFL tapped Bad Bunny to headline the Super Bowl halftime show, a conservative media outlet built a rival broadcast around Kid Rock as its centerpiece. By the time Dolly Parton's album dropped, in other words, Kid Rock wasn't just a musician with a colorful past. He had become a walking flashpoint, a name that signaled exactly where you stood politically the moment you said it out loud. And Dolly Parton, who had spent her entire life refusing to plant a flag on either side of anything, had just put her voice next to his on one of the biggest records of her career. Then came the moment that turned background controversy into a full-blown firestorm. In April of 2023, months before Rockstar even came out, Kid Rock posted a short video to social media that would dominate headlines for weeks. Standing near a lake, with cases of Bud Light lined up on a table in the distance, he made a casual joke about being in the mood for some fun, then opened fire on the cans with a gun. He finished by looking into the camera, hurling an insult at the brand and its parent company, and signing off as if nothing unusual had just happened. The clip spread instantly. Supporters cheered him on as a man standing up for his beliefs. Critics called the stunt reckless and unhinged. But the real question on everyone's mind was simpler. What exactly had a beer company done to provoke this? The answer traced back to a partnership Bud Light had made with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney, who had built a large following documenting her transition online. She had shared a sponsored post showing off the brand's familiar blue cans and a small giveaway, along with a photo of a custom can the company had sent her as a personal gift. To a segment of conservative America, that single partnership felt like the brand had picked a side. Calls for a boycott spread fast. People filmed themselves dumping the beer down drains. The company tried to clarify that the personalized can was never meant for retail shelves, but the explanation barely slowed the backlash. Kid Rock's video became the loudest response to that entire saga. By choosing to destroy the product with a firearm rather than simply criticizing it in words, he turned a marketing dispute into a culture war flashpoint. Gun safety advocates condemned the stunt as irresponsible political theater. His fan base, predictably, loved every second of it. That controversy might have stayed contained to its own corner of the internet if Dolly Parton's name hadn't been sitting right next to his on an album cover. The moment people connected the dots, the questions came fast and unrelenting. Had she known what he'd done before agreeing to record with him? Did she share his views? How could the woman famous for kindness and inclusiveness lend her voice to someone who had just turned a culture war grievance into target practice on camera? For the first time in a career built on staying above the fray, Dolly Parton found herself needing to answer for someone else's behavior. Defend him, and she risked alienating fans hurt by what he'd said and done. Stay silent, and the speculation would only get louder. There was no version of this where she could just smile and change the subject. Weeks of pressure eventually forced her hand. She sat down with the Hollywood Reporter and gave an answer that nobody quite expected. She didn't apologize. She didn't distance herself. She defended him outright. The first thing she clarified was timing. The song had been recorded long before the Bud Light video ever existed. By the time the controversy erupted, her part in the project was already finished. She had no way of knowing what he was about to do months later. But then she went further, and that's the part that made headlines everywhere. She said that even if she had known what was coming, she probably would have done the song with him anyway, because in her words, he is simply a talented guy. That admission was the real story. Here was country music's most universally adored figure, openly saying she would work with him again, controversy included, because for her this had never been about politics in the first place. She didn't stop there. She laid out what she called her own approach to people, something close to a personal philosophy of unconditional love. Loving one person, she explained, never means closing the door on someone else. Loving Kid Rock didn't mean she loved the people angry at him any less. She said plainly that she doesn't condemn, she doesn't lecture, she simply accepts and loves, the same way she has tried to live for 7 decades. On the subject of cancel culture more broadly, she was just as direct. She called it troubling, even harmful. Everyone makes mistakes, she said, even if not everyone gets caught the same way or judged the same way. She believes ultimate judgment belongs to God, not to public opinion, and that everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise, and forgiveness even after. If God can forgive, she reasoned, then she can too, and she thinks that's a standard the rest of us should hold ourselves to as well. It's a position rooted entirely in her faith. She doesn't pretend bad behavior doesn't exist. She simply believes that choosing forgiveness tends to lead somewhere better than choosing condemnation. When the interviewer asked if she had any regrets about the song, her answer was simple, none. She defended it before the controversy, during it, and after it, and made clear she'd make the same choice again. For her, this was never a political statement. It was personal. She liked working with him. She thought he had real talent. And she didn't feel any more obligated to answer for his offstage behavior than she would for any other artist she's ever collaborated with. The conversation didn't end with Kid Rock. The reporter pushed her on other divisive figures in country music, among them Jason Aldean and Oliver Anthony, both of whom had released songs that sparked their own political firestorms. Dolly's reaction stayed remarkably consistent. She said she was simply glad country music was popular enough that people were paying close attention to it at all, and that she felt the same about those songs as she did about any other country song. Everyone, she said, has the right to sing what they actually feel. If it comes from somewhere honest, they should sing it. She also spoke warmly about the growing number of black artists entering country music, saying their presence brought something the genre had always needed, an authentic voice for hardship and struggle that fit perfectly with what country music has always tried to capture. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. Her message was unmistakable. Country music belongs to everyone willing to tell the truth in it. Even her own album wasn't free of political commentary. One track, World on Fire, takes direct aim at politicians, with lyrics about not wanting to talk politics at all while calling out greedy leaders, past and present, who wouldn't recognize the truth if it hit them directly. Asked if she meant anyone specific, she said no, She meant all of them, insisting that none of them are trying hard enough to actually fix anything. She didn't single out one party over the other. She criticized both equally, which, in hindsight, might be the most quintessentially Dolly Parton answer possible. That refusal to take sides has defined her entire public life. She has turned down the Presidential Medal of Freedom twice, once when it would have come from Donald Trump, and again when it was offered by Joe Biden. She never explained why in detail, but the pattern speaks for itself. She has never wanted to be used as a political prop for anyone, regardless of party. She wasn't going to stand next to a president and let that photo be read as an endorsement of an entire administration's record. That same philosophy is exactly what shaped her decision to record with Kid Rock. She wasn't endorsing his politics, his stunts, or his public statements. She was endorsing his music, full stop. In her view, people are complicated. Someone can be deeply flawed in one area of their life and still create something genuinely beautiful in another. She has watched the public rush to judge and refuse to forgive far too many times, and she has made a habit of being the one who reaches out instead of walking away. Her admission split her audience right down the middle. Some longtime fans were disappointed, hoping she would use her platform to send a clearer message about accountability. Others found comfort in her answer, seeing it as proof that the woman they had loved for decades hadn't changed one bit, that she was still the same person who refused to participate in public shaming no matter how loud the demand for it got. Dolly Parton never set out to make a political statement. She set out to make an album that proved she belonged in a hall of fame she never asked to join. But the world she's operating in now scrutinizes every decision, dissects every collaboration, and searches for hidden meaning in every lyric and every interview answer. She can no longer just release a song and let the music speak for itself. Every choice gets weighed, debated, and turned into a referendum on her character. And through all of it, she has handled the pressure with more composure than almost anyone else in her position could manage. Whether you agree with her answer about Kid Rock or not, one thing is hard to argue with: she gave it honestly, without flinching, and without pretending to be something she isn't. In an industry built on calculated apologies and carefully worded statements, Dolly Parton simply told the truth as she sees it, and let the chips fall where they would. What do you think about how Dolly Parton handled this? Would you have made the same call she did, or do you think she should have drawn a harder line? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next.